Patrick Kenzie used to be a gangster, but after turning his life around, he chose a very different path and became a detective. Then one morning, not far from where he lived, a child kidnapping case shook the neighborhood. The media would not stop talking about the disappearance of little Amanda. It was no surprise because the 4-year-old girl had vanished without a single witness. As the head of the Boston Police Department, Captain Jack promised to solve the case no matter what it took, but Patrick was not so sure. The next morning, Amanda's aunt and uncle suddenly came to Patrick's home. Even though he looked a little rough around the edges, Patrick was actually one of the best detectives in Boston when it came to finding missing people. And that was exactly why they asked for his help. Of course, he did not work alone. He had always been assisted by his girlfriend Angie. It was not that they wanted to refuse the case, but Amanda's disappearance no longer looked like a simple missing person case. It felt more like a child abduction and possibly something even worse, like human trafficking. Angie also had another reason for wanting to stay away. In cases like this, very few children were ever found safe and unharmed. That meant there was a very real chance they would end up seeing something deeply traumatic. Even so, they could not bring themselves to walk away. That same morning, they went to the home of Amanda's mother, Helena. But the moment they arrived, they were met with an unpleasant attitude. Even stranger, Helena seemed almost indifferent to her daughter's disappearance. Meanwhile, Amanda's aunt and uncle clearly loved the little girl like she was their own child. Seeing that made Patrick and Angie decide they had to help. And this is where the case truly begins. This is Gone, Baby Gone. Now the story finally turns to what happened the night Amanda disappeared. 2 nights earlier, after putting her daughter to bed, Helena claimed she had gone to a friend's house for about 30 minutes just to hang out. But when she came back home, Amanda was already gone from her bed. The problem was, no one was sure how trustworthy Helena's story really was, because according to Lionel, she was still heavily using drugs. Not long after that, the Boston police chief arrived at the scene. Unfortunately, Patrick's presence was not welcomed by the officers. They believed this case was not something for a private detective, especially someone like Patrick. But whether they liked it or not, the law was on his side. Since the family had hired him, Patrick and Angie had every right to stay informed about the investigation into Amanda's disappearance. Later that day, Patrick and Angie visited a bar where Helena often spent her time. But when Patrick tried to ask questions, the owner refused to say anything. Luckily, Patrick happened to run into an old friend sitting nearby, and that was when the truth slowly started to come out. According to his friend, Helena was a serious addict. In fact, on the very night Amanda disappeared, she had not gone to a friend's house at all. She had been high at that very bar with her boyfriend Ray. During the conversation, Patrick also noticed something strange. One of the bar's customers seemed very bothered by the investigation into Amanda's disappearance. And he was not the only one. The bar owner, Dave, also acted suspiciously. Patrick tried to keep things calm, but the insults kept coming. Then things crossed the line when they started threatening to harass Angie. At that point, Patrick had had enough, and he was forced to fight back.
Now you know. Your fucking mouth's closed.
Later that afternoon, Patrick and Angie meet with 2 detectives assigned by the Boston police to handle Amanda's case. But something feels off. After 3 days of investigation, the police still have no idea where the little girl is. So far, their only lead is a former convict who they suspect might be a pedophile. What makes it worse is that they have not even questioned Helena's boyfriend Ray, even though in many cases like this, the people closest to the victim are often involved. At the very least, this situation finally makes the police realize that Patrick's investigative skills might be more valuable than they first thought. That same day, Patrick also pays a visit to a drug dealer he knows named Baba. He wants to understand just how deep Helena's addiction really goes. From Baba, he learns that Helena has been buying drugs from another dealer named Cheese. On top of that, her boyfriend Ray works as a drug courier. This new information quickly opens up a darker side of Amanda's disappearance. Meanwhile, Detective Remy becomes furious when he sees Helena trying to hide the truth. Under pressure, she finally admits that, not long ago, she and Ray stole money from Cheese. The details are complicated, but in short, Cheese believes the money was seized by the police, when in reality, Helena kept it for herself. Without wasting any time, they all head to Ray's house, since that is where Helena hid the stolen money. On the way there, Angie cannot hide her frustration. She is disgusted by how Helena can still laugh and act carefree while her child is missing, especially when this entire situation may be connected to her own actions. But when they arrive at the house, everything takes a darker turn. Ray is already dead. The condition of his body shows clear signs that he was tortured before being killed. Seeing this, Helena finally begins to understand how serious her mistake really was. It turns out the stolen money had been hidden in the yard without Ray's knowledge. That explains why he was tortured. He could not tell them where the money was because he did not know. Now the case becomes even more complicated. It is no longer just about a missing child. It involves a dangerous drug dealer, and if they follow standard procedures, Amanda's life could be at risk. Instead of escalating the situation or bringing in a full tactical team, Detective Remy suggests a different approach. They should return the stolen money as soon as possible. At this point, nothing matters more than saving Amanda. Helena begins to panic, and for the first time she realizes the full weight of what has happened. No matter how flawed she is still a mother, and now her child's life is on the line. That night, Patrick insists that he should be the only one to go into Cheese's place and handle the negotiation. The two of them already know each other, and not many people would expect that Patrick himself used to struggle with addiction. He gets straight to the point. He tells Cheese that they are there to return the money Helena stole. In exchange, Amanda must be released. The police are even willing to let the rest of the case go, as long as the girl is returned safely. But despite being given that chance, Cheese plays dumb. It seems like he refuses to admit anything, most likely because he does not want to be tied to Ray's death. Things quickly get tense. Cheese tries to intimidate Patrick, but Patrick does not back down. Instead, he makes it clear that if Cheese is lying, then every dollar of that stolen money will be used against him later. The message is simple. This will not end well for him if he keeps playing games. In the end, the negotiation completely falls apart. Detective Remy even blames Patrick for the failure, acting as if the outcome would have been different if he had gone in instead. But then, the next morning, everything suddenly changes. Cheese contacts the police and claims he is ready to return Amanda, but only under his conditions. To prove that she is still alive, he leaves a child's jacket and a letter in front of Patrick's house. Back at the station, Captain Jack shows them a transcript of a phone call between Remy and Cheese from earlier that morning. The exchange is set to happen that very night at an abandoned quarry lake. Cheese makes it very clear that if the police try anything, Amanda will be killed on the spot. The plan is kept extremely secret. Only a handful of them know about it. By this point, they have already broken multiple procedures, but none of that matters anymore. The only thing that matters is saving Amanda. Unlike Captain Jack, Angie cannot shake the feeling that something is wrong. To her, this could easily be a trap, and she believes they should involve the FBI. But suddenly, Jack loses his temper and reveals something personal. Years ago, his own daughter was kidnapped, and because the case was mishandled, it ended in tragedy. An hour before the exchange, they arrive at the location early. Still, Angie keeps questioning why Cheese chose this place. What makes it even stranger is how the exchange is set up. It will happen across two separate hills. Remy and his partner Nick will handle the money, while Patrick and Angie go to retrieve Amanda from a different spot. But just as everyone takes their positions, everything falls apart. Gunfire suddenly erupts. In the chaos, Cheese is shot and killed, and in his final moments, he throws Amanda into the lake. Without hesitation, Angie dives in after her, risking everything to find out if the little girl is still alive. But no matter how long they search, Amanda's body is never found. The aftermath is devastating. Amanda's death ultimately falls on Captain Jack's shoulders. He is forced to resign after it is revealed that the operation was carried out outside official procedure. Meanwhile, it turns out Cheese had a trusted associate named Chris. He was involved in the negotiation and managed to escape with the money. But his luck does not last long. Shortly after, the money is stolen again by another group, and Chris is killed on the spot. Amanda's death leaves a deep scar, especially because her body is never found. For Angie, who was directly involved in the case, the guilt becomes overwhelming. Then just 2 months later, another child goes missing. This time, it is a boy named Pietro. Not long after the news breaks, Baba approaches Patrick at a bar. The last time they met, Patrick had given him photos of 3 former convicts who were once suspected in Amanda's case. All 3 were drug users, which is why Patrick asked Baba to track them down. They soon arrive at a house linked to one of those leads. Baba insists on continuing a drug deal inside, using it as a way to gain access. Leon and his wife, already desperate and dealing with withdrawal, go along with it. That gives Baba the chance to quietly search the house. But just as he is about to head upstairs, Leon's wife suddenly pulls out a gun. Moments later, another man appears from the upper floor. His name is Corwin, a known pedophile who has been on the authorities' radar for a long time. What makes things even more disturbing is the necklace on his arm. It looks exactly like the one Pietro was wearing in the news reports. That is when Patrick immediately calls Detective Remy to confirm his suspicions. But before they can move in properly, gunfire suddenly breaks out. Detective Nick is hit badly, and it looks like he may not survive. The situation spirals out of control, and Patrick has no choice but to go inside to check on Remy. As soon as he enters, Leon's wife starts shooting again, forcing Patrick to retreat upstairs. What he finds there is something he never expected. Inside one of the rooms, he discovers the truth. Pietro had been kidnapped and kept there all along. The condition of the boy makes it clear that he was abused and killed in a brutal way. Overcome with anger and shock, Patrick reacts without thinking and shoots the man responsible. But once it is over, a wave of regret hits him. Deep down, he knows that taking a life goes against everything he believes in. He later tries to explain this to Detective Remy, but the two of them see things very differently. In fact, Remy admits that in the past he has planted false evidence just to put certain criminals behind bars, especially those who use their own children to hide drug crimes. For Remy, sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to achieve real justice. But something about his story does not sit right. If you pay close attention, there is a detail that stands out. Remy once mentioned that Helena's boyfriend Ray had been working as his informant for 15 years. Yet when they met at the bar 2 months earlier, Remy acted like he did not know him at all. That inconsistency raises a serious question. From the very beginning, was there something the police were hiding in Amanda's case? A few days later, they all attend Detective Nick's funeral. Dozens of officers are there, including Remy. Patrick tries to approach him and bring up their previous conversation, but Remy reacts nervously and urges him to forget everything that was said.
I said some things I shouldn't have. Too much rum.
That reaction only makes Patrick more suspicious. Later that day, Patrick decides to dig deeper into Remy's past. He reaches out to an officer who has known Remy for years, and that is when another piece of the truth comes to light. According to insider information, Remy had known from the very beginning that Ray and Helena had stolen money from the drug dealer, Cheese. He learned it through a colleague in narcotics, which raises a serious question. If Remy already knew the truth, why did he pretend to investigate Helena as if he had no idea? At that point, Patrick finally begins to understand who might really be behind Amanda's disappearance. Around the same time, Lionel, Amanda's uncle, becomes visibly anxious when Patrick calls and asks to meet privately. It becomes clear that Lionel has a major role in the case, even though his true motive is still unclear. That evening, they meet at a bar. Without wasting time, Patrick pressures Lionel to tell the truth, and eventually it comes out. From the very beginning, Lionel and Remy had known each other, and they had worked together to kidnap Amanda, all as part of a plan to take the money Helena had stolen from Cheese. But that explanation does not fully add up. To tell the full story, Lionel needs a few drinks before he can continue. Then he finally reveals what really happened. About a week before Amanda went missing, Lionel had been taking care of her. Not long after, Helena and Ray showed up, clearly panicked after stealing the money. Lionel immediately passed that information to Remy. From there, the two of them started planning a way to recover the money Helena had hidden. But the plan quickly fell apart. Just hours after Amanda disappeared, Lionel's wife contacted the media and even hired Patrick to find her. To avoid raising suspicion, Remy had no choice but to frame Cheese as the main suspect. On the night of the exchange, Cheese actually showed up because he believed he was getting his money back. In reality, Remy had already made a deal with his associate, Chris. The plan was simple: split the stolen money among themselves. But once they arrived, everything went wrong. Cheese fought back, and in the chaos, Amanda ran toward the lake.
She just fell.
Back in the present, as Lionel finishes explaining, something unexpected happens. A masked robber suddenly storms into the bar.
Open the safe, now.
It is strange enough on its own, but even stranger is how the robber seems to be targeting Lionel specifically. That is when Patrick realizes the truth. The man behind the mask is actually Detective Remy. He came to make sure Lionel would never talk, but he is too late. A shot is fired, and the masked man is hit. Badly wounded, Remy tries to escape upstairs, but Patrick chases after him. The bullet has clearly struck a vital area. In his final moments, Patrick confronts him, trying to understand why he would go so far, especially after presenting himself as someone who protects children. But in the end, Remy leaves behind a chilling answer, one that only raises more questions than it resolves. Remy's death raises more questions than answers. The police question Patrick extensively, trying to piece together what really happened in Amanda's kidnapping. No one at the station seems to know anything about the negotiation that took place 2 months earlier. The two detectives involved are now dead, and Captain Jack has already stepped down. To support his story, Patrick tells them to check the transcript of the call between Remy and Cheese, but the response he gets is unexpected. The police claim no such transcript ever existed. Any call that comes into the station should be recorded, which means the document Patrick saw was completely fabricated. At that moment, everything finally clicks. Patrick realizes the true motive behind Amanda's kidnapping. The next morning, he and Angie head out to a rural area to confront someone. But when they arrive, Angie hesitates. She chooses to stay in the car, convinced that uncovering the truth will only make things worse. Patrick walks up to the house, and it turns out to belong to Captain Jack. As they greet each other, something unbelievable happens. Amanda appears. From the very beginning, her death had been staged. Remy, Nick, Lionel, and Captain Jack had all worked together to take her away from her mother. They believed they were saving her from a life with Helena, who was still trapped in addiction. The idea originally came from Lionel. He recalls an incident from the previous year when Helena took Amanda to the beach but left her alone in a car for hours while she got high. The child ended up severely dehydrated. That moment pushed Remy to take action, and at the same time, Captain Jack had long wanted to adopt a child. At first, Patrick threatens to involve the FBI if Jack does not return Amanda. But deep down, he struggles with the decision. Revealing the truth might not lead to a better outcome. Amanda now seems happy, surrounded by people who genuinely care about her. Still, Patrick remembers the promise he made to Helena, that he would bring her daughter home no matter what. This decision puts him at odds with Angie. From a distance, she had already seen how happy Amanda looked in Jack's care. Angie reminds him that Helena has never truly cared for her child, and exposing the truth will only ruin Amanda's future. She even warns Patrick that if he goes through with it, their relationship will not survive. In the end, Captain Jack is taken into custody by the FBI, and Amanda is returned to her mother. In front of the media, Helena expresses her gratitude and even gives advice to other parents. But for Patrick, the cost of his decision is personal. He and Angie no longer live together, and their relationship comes to an end. A few days later, Patrick visits Helena's house to check on Amanda. But what he finds is unsettling. Helena is getting ready to go out on a date with a man she just met online. And while she is away, she plans to leave Amanda with a neighbor who is also struggling with addiction. After everything that has happened, it becomes clear that Helena has not changed at all. So the moral of the story is, if your life choices are chaotic enough, even the cops, criminals, and kidnappers will team up and still somehow make things worse.